There are a few champions in this game who are in desperate need of reworks, but there are even more champions who simply need a bit of updating to catch up to their colleagues. Trundle's rework was one of the best changes Riot has ever made. It kept Trundle true to what he was designed to be while updating his kit to evolve with the game. I feel a lot of champions could use touch-ups like that. Small fixes, small power trades, or quality of life ups that can have far-reaching effects that are unlikely to cause massive schism in the overall balance of the game. Keep in mind that some of these champions are actually viable in solo queue and sometimes seen as strong picks, but they tend to falter in competitive or in more serious environments. I encourage you to give your suggestions in the comments below and opinions of any of the changes proposed in the video. Some of these touch-ups were inspired by fan suggestions. Volibear's ultimate is such a disappointment. It is one of the least impactful ultimates in the game, and, in most situations, it is difficult to get the full value from it. Volibear does suffer from being a limited champion, but having a more useful ultimate could bring him to the forefront in some compositions despite those shortcomings. My favorite suggestion was from a fan on the last Volibear video I uploaded. The fan suggested that his ultimate could become a utility one that grants his teammates thunder attacks for each time he slashes an enemy. Basically, every auto attack gives his teammates a thunder stack, cannot stack but can refresh, that triggers on their own auto attacks. This auto attack of theirs triggers a weaker form of Volibear's thunder on the enemy. It's basically a static shiv for everyone. Volibear would still technically have a difficult time maximizing the value of his ultimate, but it wouldn't totally punish you for only getting 1 or 2 auto attacks on a target. It would increase his ultimate's usability as well, because if you can't get the target you want, you can just attack any nearby target to grant your team thunder powers. It could even garner Volibear some aggro, as you'd want to shut down his thunder gift in some situations. This would also boost his pushing tremendously with a team, since minions will get obliterated by the chain lightning. He still can't initiate and will have issues elsewhere, but at the very least this means he can function in creative pushing compositions. Nocturne is not the worst champion, and he's not in the worst of spots, but he's just kind of being overshadowed by a lot of champions right now. His kit is very fair and I think it's properly designed, but I feel quality of life to his Q and his E would make a lot of sense. I never understood why there wasn't an interaction between those abilities in the first place. Nocturne's Q leaves a dusk trail on the enemy if he manages to hit them with it. The quality of life buff I'd suggest is that the tether on his E could last much longer on a champion with a dusk trail. It could even simply have a faster cast time, as the target is technically engulfed in shadows, and it would make sense that they succumb to fear quicker. This small change won't suddenly make him super deadly, but would reward players for hitting his Q and make him more effective at ganking. It would also make his ultimate less awkward to use against potentially slippery champions. Karthus is in an awful spot. If champions that can deal with him are dominant, then he just gets rolled, and more champions are being released that can utterly crush him. In metas where he does fine, he just rolls mid lane and gets out of hand and frustrates players. There was a niche where he was played, and it was honestly incredibly fun. I loved playing jungle Karthus, but this latest season made it so much more difficult as he gets mono-starved easier and he takes too much damage. If Riot would want to bring him back without running the risk of his volatile laning, they could just give him a jungle buff. He already has some qualities that make him potentially potent, with enough checks on him to prevent him from becoming obscene. A secondary passive somewhere on his kit and a buff to his E mana portion could make a world of difference. His mana restoration could have a much higher value when he kills large and epic monsters, so he can maintain a semblance of sustain while clearing and won't be too reliant on blue buff like he currently is. He could have an added passive where he plays with the lore of liches from fantasy. In fantasy lore, liches have a freezing touch that can instantly kill lesser beings. In League, Karthus could play with this passive in that monsters and minions lose a portion of attack speed each time they strike him. In lane, this might not make much of a difference since you don't want to be attracting minion aggro in the first place, but in the jungle this could potentially stop 2 or even 3 auto attacks, which would make a world of difference. Rammus has needed some love for a long time. First off, he needs better attack animations and animations in general for all his abilities, because the ones he has are just awful. Second, his passive is pretty dull and has no real impact anymore. Ripping off Dota's bristleback entirely, whenever he gets struck by a physical attack, he shoots spikes in a very small AoE around them, basically at melee range. This of course would have a cooldown, but like Amumu's E, the cooldown could be reduced by a second or so each time he's struck by a physical attack. This would help his jungle tremendously as it's currently sloppy and slow. It wouldn't be too overbearing against a lot of champions since they either outrange it or use spells. Remember, it's not a thorn mail effect. He would destroy melee champions more than he does right now, but that wouldn't be a terrible thing since he's already a very niche and specific champion. This would only further the anti-melee, anti-AA champion he's become. It could even help him in lane as he could push lanes with much more relative ease. Remember to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. I have a few sponsors that are helping me maintain this channel such as Crunchyroll, Pro Build Systems, and Loot Crate. I have links to these services in the description below. Using them and using my codes directly supports my channel.